You've got just 4 weeks left to go in your AFL Fantasy SuperCoach Dream Team and Keeper season. Or perhaps you've got a league focus and it's cooked. Regardless, here at the Coaches Panel, we want to navigate you through not only this week, but the final month of your fantasy footy season. The regular stocks on, stocks off. We've got that set for you. We want to help you with those last minute decisions about whether you're going to break your team or not. We've got some big predictions for teams, for formats, some couple of pods our guest has lined up for you, and going to get a bit of a year in review perspective, not so much about players and picks, although we'll hit that, but rather talk about the moves you could or did made that either helped or hindered your fantasy season trajectory. Joining me on this week's strategy session is he has pretty much every week this year. Love talking fantasy footy with him. Fellow Coaches panelist, MiniMonk. Nice to see you, mate, and your Fremantle Dockers up and about yet again. It's happening.
And you and your Adelaide Crows, they come for the top of the ladder soon, aren't you?
Lids
on. Lids on. Okay. Lids firmly on here as well. We've got 4 weeks to go and still not locked into finals yet. It's going to be a very hectic run home for the top 9 teams to make the 8, but we'll see how it goes.
If you want to hear what an Adelaide supporter with the lids off looks like, check out our sister podcast, Finders Keepers. Jordox not only has taken the lid off, he has just discarded it into another suburb. He could not find his lid. He hasn't seen his lid for weeks. He is lidless, my friends, that is for sure. Joining us on this podcast, he's been a regular part of our collaborations over the last few pre-seasons. He's a part of the Dr SuperCoach stable. He's one of the best analytical minds when it comes to understanding data and then being able to interpret it to give you that cutting edge, specifically in the SuperCoach community, but he's certainly given some great insights to the AFL fantasy community. You heard him a lot through the 50 Most Relevant. We had to get him on one last time before we wrapped up our 2025 season. From the Dr SuperCoach stable, it is peak mentality, mate. Nice to see you. A good, strong season from you and a lot of big critical decisions we've got to make over the next month to get us ultimately to our end goal.
Yeah, thanks for having me again, MJ. It's, as we were talking just before air, it's a bit of a pleasure that you and I have done quite a few podcasts together. MiniMonk and I have done a couple together, but first time we've got the trio, the Holy Grail, on all three of us together. So let's see how we go. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I love chatting to both of you guys, like even just in DMs, and we've got a lot of similar thoughts. So yeah, let's get into it. And I'm glad your two teams are going well, and we don't need to mention mine, but I've got a Tassie Devils jersey in the background, if anyone can see that. So I'm jumping ship as soon as they're in the league.
Yeah, and I get it. That's totally fine. We talked it right literally just moments ago about there are some coaches that their fantasy year is done, either literally because they were going for a league focus, they're now out of finals, and whether it be a keeper league or a single season draft, they're like, that's it, I'm done, I'm out, or even a single season draft. And then there are some coaches that are going for a rankings focus, and politely, if you're not in the top 20 or 30 in Dream Team, top couple of 100 across SuperCoach, and probably, dare I say it, inside the top 50 to 80 in AFL Fantasy, barring some miracles, it's going to be pretty hard to get the victory in those classic formats. So for a lot of coaches, they're starting to get a little retrospective, rather, should I say, about their year, the decisions they made, what they did well, and the mistakes that they made. And so before we cast our eyes forward to the future 4 rounds, I thought I'd be very interested in your guys' take. How do you look at your year analytically and not let, when things have not gone your way, crush you in this emotional, depressed state of I'm terrible at fantasy football? Because nobody ever acts emotionally around their fantasy football side. No one's ever done that, I know. But Minnie, maybe I'll start with you. How do you determine when you've made missteps, and when do you identify them? How do you identify them? And then how do you take them through to actual learnings for 2026 and for future seasons?
It's one of those things that actually probably starts during your preseason, because you build a squad of 30, you have, 40 odd trades in SuperCoach and Dream Team and 2 trades a week in AFL Fantasy. But your starting team dictates a lot of how your season can go in a way. And we all look back at our starting teams and think about players like Jaden Short, Harry Perryman, Sam De Koning, Tom Stewart, even for a lot of coaches. And some coaches might even say that starting Ollie Hollins, even some might even say a player like Tristan Cherry was the wrong player to start, and they wish they started Will Day. There's so many of them that you can just throw up. And understanding the narrative as to why you picked them in the first place is the first step to being able to correct that for 2026. You know, with Will Day, he went absolutely massive in that round 0 game, and a lot of coaches went to him as a result of that. Same with Harry Perryman. We saw the role that we thought he was going to have for the whole year. We had a good score from him. We thought that was going to hold. So understanding what kind of changed between that point that made you make that decision, and then when you got into the season and saw the role proper, and how you can correct that thought process so that you don't repeat the same mistakes. That's probably my biggest takeaway from the 2025 season, and where I think I would start to point coaches towards having a think about in preparation for the 2026 preseasons.
And I'm keen on your take on this in a moment too, Pig, but there's kind of been these player pivotal junction moments that if you've got on the hot hand player at the right time, it's just set you into this absolute catalytic moment. Most recently over the last month to 2 months, it's clearly been a Nasiah Wanganeen-Millera. Over the last 3 months, it's been a Brodie Grundy. And you could argue probably more for AFL Fantasy, although there was some trends of it in SuperCoach. To start the year, it was a Matt Kennedy in your forward line. So there's been these players that for 6-8 weeks, retrospectively now, we can go, that was the right move. How do you not let kind of hindsight be the reason where you go, well, I should have seen that and I didn't, versus those moments where you go, I saw a trend and I didn't react quickly enough? Because sometimes we can see things in hindsight and go, of course, that's the right move. But retrospectively, how do we actually look at when those trends start to emerge and not overpay, but also not disrespect a player that's just starting on an inevitable hot streak?
Well, I think sometimes it's a fair bit of luck as well. Like for every Nasiah Wanganeen-Millera, there was a Dane Zorko or a Harry Sheasel that went the other way at the same time. So sometimes focusing on the outcome can be a little bit dangerous, and you just got to think back to like, why did I make that decision? And would I do it again? And going back to what MiniMonk was saying, Harry Perryman, the data we had on him was that he was going to be a very high CBA mid and would probably score well in that role. So even if we had that time again, maybe we'd still do it. I'm not sure. I know there are some other sports like NFL and NBA do it, where the NBA will literally try and exactly break down how many minutes per game each player is going to get in each position. And AFL doesn't really do that because, you know, there's 5 players on an NBA court versus 18 per team. So it's a bit harder. But I guess my point there is that midfields that have a lot of mouths to feed, and Collingwood now in hindsight that they were running Sidebottom and Pendlebury and Long quite high numbers. Maybe Collingwood are actually one of those midfields that in hindsight had too many mouths to feed. And I think we all knew going in the season Adelaide would be one of those teams with too many mouths to feed. So maybe you could have actually faded Rankin based on that. That would have been pretty ballsy because he was looking like the hot guy at the start of the season. But that's potentially one of my learnings, trying to pick maybe the thinner midfields and just the good guys from that. I don't know if it'll always hold up, but that's something some other sports do look into, the actual, you know, how many minutes per game will this guy get in this position? That's something that we could go on, but yeah, Perryman, tough one.
Yeah, I know that's something that a lot of the really good projectionists are doing. Like Jaden's starting to do that with his breakdown of where players are positionally allocated and where they're going to score. It's AFL Fantasy based at this stage, but you speak about someone like Harry Perryman. Yeah, he did have the role. Like in those 3 out of those first 4 games, he had about 50% CBAs. It was only that round 2 game against the Dogs where I think it was, I can't remember who it was. Someone got injured very early and he had to go down back to cover them, and they had Ned Long come in as the sub and he got high CBA rate. I think that it's, with someone like him, it's that as well. It's like, I don't want to get bogged down just talking about him the entire time, but it's like, but it's also about like, have we seen other people in that particular team score in that particular role as that, fourth CBA midfielder? When you talk about Nick Dacos, you talk about Pendlebury, you talk about Sidebottom, you talk about, Jordan De Goey when he's fit being in there as well. We've even seen Tom Mitchell now come back in and score, but they're not scoring at a massive clip rate. We should probably try and be more analytical when it comes to what role they're replacing, what's another player done in that particular role, and is there a reason why they can outdo, say, that number? Like if we suddenly had knowledge to say, okay, Scott Pendlebury is going to be playing off half back, then you go, well, great, that's another midfield slot that's open for someone like Perryman to be able to score. And using that sort of information to guide our decision making, yeah.
Yeah, Pig, I'm curious, like, SuperCoach is your primary game that you play. I know there are some parallels to the trading principles in Dream Team, although the scoring platform and methodology is different. The trading principles have a lot of parallels due to really, they've got the same rules, same players on field, flex, all those variables. What are some thoughts for coaches that might feel like they're out of trades or only have one trade left? There's a lot of the community that's on the low end of trades. The official SuperCoach podcast was just sharing in the last week or so about what percentage of coaches have a certain volume of trades left, and a lot of the communities at either none, one, or maybe two. There's a couple of wild people that have like 10, which is incredible. But are there some lessons there for coaches that feel like the year is done, again, ranking or league focus, just around the trade methodology that's certainly evolved in SuperCoach over the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think, and like speaking from personal experience, I used to play for leagues and I always used to save my trades a bit more. And actually at this point of the year with 4 trades left coming into league finals, I usually tried to make sure I had 4 trades left. So it was like 1 trade per week if there was an injury. If there wasn't an injury, then the next week I could do a luxury upgrade, and they become really, really important in the last few weeks, or, if you're trying to win a league matchup. So it might be that your ruckman's coming up against Wits and you think he's only going to get a 60. You could flip him to whoever's playing Flynn and, potentially gain 70 points just in that 1 week. And in those years I did that, I actually ended up ranking pretty well. But now since, especially the last 2 years, and I'm still ranked okay this year, but I'm just kind of plateauing, just stalling like around the 3K mark. So I haven't really made much ground, but it's, I think we get really, especially coming out of the buys, like having a full team. And then we're really focusing, and I was as well, is just trying to maximize points in round 15, maximize points in round 16, maximize points in round 17. But even doing that, you may be only making up like 20, 30 points a week as if you didn't do that trade. Whereas now, like I've been rocking 22 because I've got no cherry cover and no trade. So and I had to, and I'm copying Clark's scores in the back line as a result. So if I had saved that trade, it just went cherry to Gawn, and I was getting Gawn scores now instead of Clark. That's such a bigger swing than just prioritizing like around 15 or around 16. So there's some sort of happy medium, and it's different for different year. Like it might have been last year where we didn't get, there was one year in the last couple where we didn't really get many injuries at all at the end, and people had 2 trades for the last 2 months, and that was fine. But then we had a week like a few weeks ago this year where I copped the cherry, but I also copped Nick Martin and Jason Horne-Francis out for the year. So that's just my final 2 trades done, and then I'm 6 weeks with no trades.
Yeah.
So it can be year dependent, but and I say it every year. We all say it every year. I'd like to save more trades to the end of the year, but I really, really would.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, I look at it this year.
Go for it.
And this is the first year where I think I've actually been able to make trades in the last 6 weeks of the year. Like I just look quickly back in 2024, my last trades were pulled 7 weeks to go. 2023, my last trades were pulled 7 weeks to go. 2022, my last trades were pulled with 6 weeks to go. This year I'm rocking 1 trade left, and it doesn't feel like enough. It does feel like a bit of a different year because there's been a bit more chaos. I wouldn't say carnage, but I'd say chaos. No. Because it's been very hard to pick who the top liners are going to be. A lot of SuperCoach specifically, a lot of teams came out of the bye and went, right, Marcus Montempelli's my target. I'm going to get him. He was at 660K. The next 2 weeks, he then drops 100K because he has a couple of poor scores in a row. if you'd waited 2 weeks' time, you could have got him 100K cheaper. And all of a sudden now he's back up again. Same with the Nick Dacos. Like, if you got on him at the exact right time, you were making a lot of money. If you got on Brodie Grundy at the right time, you're making a lot of money.
Oh my gosh.
And you combine that with players that we thought were going to be, top liners and then get injured. Like Jason Horne-Francis got injured. Cherry's been suspended for 3 weeks. We've seen injuries to players like Caldwell, who were really popular for players to jump onto because he was scoring like a premium. And all of a sudden, you've used a couple of trades to fix up your rookies. You've used a couple of trades on found mid prices, like a lot of teams did at the start of the season. And you're left with, coaches running Tom McCarthy as their D6 or their M8/M9. You've got coaches running Adam Cheris still that they're still holding, or Caleb Daniel that they've got at F6. It's pretty common across a lot of teams to have that. And just not be anywhere near what you would be happy with as a completed team this year. And I think that's one thing that I look at this year compared to previous years is I don't think that me personally, I don't feel anywhere close to a completed team in any format compared to how I felt it in previous years.
Yeah, it's so true. We know the luck variance is always going to be a part of successful seasons in fantasy footy. We always minimize how much we put trust on it to do well in SuperCoach fantasy and all those things. It's not a luck-free thing, but it's also not luck is the only variable factor. Good coaches are good coaches that get there, but the timing elements are there. Like you talk about Bontempelli. Oh, I know a lot of people that were like, oh, I'd love Bont. I can't afford it. I'll get a Colby McKercher who's coming off the bye. And it's like, oh, it's the best I can do. And for that sort of first month out of the bye was an absolute dynamite pick in contrast to Bont. Saved you 300,000 and you're probably getting a marginally better scorer in that period of time as well. These are the luck variances where, in principle, getting Bont was right at that time. Settling for McKercher probably wasn't, but it was a best you can get. And then, well, the variance of luck has landed the way for those that landed. Like, that's a part of it. One last thing I want to ask you, Minnie, before we hit some pigs predictions in a moment is, what do you think the impact has been as we look at the year that has been? Again, we're not trying to move off of 2025. There's a lot of coaches and coming to the coaches panel wanting advice for the rest of the year. And we got you. Pigs got some predictions. Can I put Minnie and I to the test? And then we've got to get our stocks off too. So don't worry. Hang with us if you're ready for some. Give me some last month's stuff, boys. Help me out. But what impact do you think the buys have been? We've had more mid-year buys than ever before. Granted, it's only one, but more best 18s than ever before. Blessing and a curse could probably be the way you see it, whether you were chasing and needed the restriction of scoring curse if you're actually at the leading pack and felt a little bit drawn back. Is this something that you think the game format makers might need to review or consider heading into 2025?
I think they can. I mean, we're playing constantly evolving games. As much as we like it or not, the creators of these games are the ones that dictate the rules, and we just have to play by the rules that they choose to put in front of us. And I don't think that the buys were the worst thing in the world. I don't think they were the best thing in the world. We just have to abide by them. But what I do think they did is that I think that they led to coaches using a bit more trades in the limited trade formats. I think that most coaches tried to really get to 22, 23 playing in SuperCoach and Dream Team, and that might have been a little bit of a detriment to their trade situation come the end of the year. And I think in AFL Fantasy, it led to a very static sort of field. Like normally during the buys, you can see some really dramatic rank movements. You see coaches moving up or down a few thousand ranks at a time. And it just didn't really feel like that happened this year. And that might be because everyone was in the same boat. There was a lot of carnage. But I feel like it was more due towards the buy, and you're playing best 18 when there's, 2 or 4 teams missing, which just doesn't feel like there's enough reward for coaches that were able to prepare well and then trade well during that period.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, Pig. One of the things where we knew you were coming on this podcast is I love your stats and your analysis and your insights, but I love putting you to the test with some predictions. So in a moment, I want you to hit me with your top 5 SuperCoach scoring predictions and your AFL fantasy ones. But before we get there, we've set you a task. Looking at fixtures and teams, who are the teams we should be targeting from a fixture perspective? Give us your top 5 that might just help coaches either make those last-minute deviations, trades, plans, or even raid the waiver wire a little bit if they're playing in a draft league.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got I've got a few, 5 teams here, and just a couple of little honourable mentions. But as we go through them, we can brainstorm some names from these teams potentially, and I'll throw some out to you guys. But so we got 4 weeks left, and it's really easy now to have a look at the fixture, and the fixtures are so easy to read, so important as well. And also thinking about where those teams are on the ladder, like, I don't know, thinking someone like Melbourne that's out of the race for finals, are they actually really going to go that hard versus, Adelaide, who might be able to get top of the ladder? Kind of trying to think about motivation might help a little bit as well. But just purely on fixture, because they do play such an important role. There's a few I wanted to talk about. Just a few little shout-outs that didn't quite make the cut, but if you're after a little bit of a pod in the back line, I quite like John Noble with Richmond, Carlton, GWS and Port, especially that Richmond-Carlton games, and then GWS and Port are actually pretty good for defenders. That's just a little smoky one. Tim English could be an option if you're looking for a ruckman. I'm not sure many people are looking for a ruckman anymore because he's got a Briggs and a Flynn matchup to come. But he does have a Max Gawn matchup, so, that tempers it a bit. And then I'm going to give a very honourable mention to Max Gawn himself. I'm not going to put Melbourne in the top 5 because their run's actually not that good for other positions. But for rucks, it's elite. So he goes West Coast this week, Matt Flynn. Then he gets English, and then he gets Meek. So that's a really, really nice 3-run stretch. Finished with Darcy Cameron, who's kind of just middle of the packish. So Max Gawn non-owners like me, I'm probably a bit worried for what's coming in the next month. So that's someone that I think if you are trading into, that should be, especially he's dropped a bit in price, that should be one of the top targets. But if we go through the 5 teams that I think have a really, really good fixture to finish, I'm going to go 5th is your boys, MJ, with Adelaide. So they come up against Hawthorn this week's a bit of a tough one, but they get West Coast and North in the last month. There's also Collingwood there in there who's tough. So they kind of got 2 tough, 2 really easy. So I quite like Adelaide. You could think about, if you don't have Dawson or Rankin, they can be a target. But Jake Saligo is on a bit of a heater, especially in SuperCoach. I think he's hovering around like the 100 over his last 3. But with those matchups with West Coast and North, he could be someone if you're looking for someone cheap. But then also in the forward line, Riley Thilthorpe's been getting a lot of buzz in the Dr SuperCoach Slack, and there was a big debate the other week about whether people go for Jeremy Cameron or Riley Thilthorpe, and then they both popped out monsters this week, so both camps were really, really happy. I personally, I don't love recommending or trading in key forwards. They can be a bit temperamental, but he's been great. But then also, another forward, maybe like Ben Keys, he's actually put together 2 out of his last 3 games have been quite good. He's someone I more think of in draft, but if you're really scraping the bottom of the forward barrel, someone like him could be an option. So you guys got thoughts on Thilthorpe, Keys, Saligo, any other Adelaide players potentially?
Penny, I'm going to step out. I'm going to excuse myself because the con glasses might start to walk on. So I'll just excuse myself for this one.
I can tell you that I'm a fan of Riley Thilthorpe because I actually traded into him in DT 2 weeks ago. I think he's got the goods for a run home. I think the fixture's there as well. I think that you've nailed it on the head though. Like Dawson, if you can get him, is expensive for a reason. The run home is fantastic. He's a genuine captaincy shout. Probably not this week, but the next 3 weeks, like you wouldn't be uncomfortable putting the VC or the C on him. And Saligo is a bit of point of difference. Is definitely someone that does have a bit of interest.
Yeah, it's a good shout. All right, 4 more to go, Pig.
Let's get going. GWS have a pretty good run now. They've got, and this one depends a little bit on which position. So especially if it's a defender, you're looking at Bulldogs, North, Gold Coast and St Kilda. It's a really nice run for the defenders who obviously there's Whitfield and Ash. But also Finn Callaghan, since he's come back from that injury, that was one of my favourite starting picks of the year, and I'm really sad to trade him out. And now very happy to see him going well. But, there's also a couple of teams that key forwards are beating up on. So could Jesse Hogan get on a little string? I said string because I also put Jake Stringer, ? He's had a couple of big games lately. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. That's maybe more of a draft pickup. But yeah, GWS have a pretty decent run. I wouldn't go there for a ruckman because they've got Cherry coming back and Witsy. But for some of their other positions, GWS have some good runs.
Gee, you just want one of the Lockies, don't you, in that back line? Like, to be frank, you'd feel great with one or both, given that tear of fixtures that they could happen. Like, maybe Jack Sinclair's is not far off it, but yeah, you want probably one of those Lockie boys to really help you on the run home. Who you got at 3 though, Pig? I'm interested.
Then we go to Sydney. Sydney have a really nice run home, especially they've got Brisbane and Geelong, which is pretty hard in the middle too, but they bookend that with Essendon and West Coast, so I'm going to say pretty much 2 of the easiest right now for most positions. So Chad Warner, I think Isaac Heaney is going to dominate those 2 games. That game he had against North the other week, I reckon that's nearly the best individual game I've seen, at least lately. He could do that 2 more times, who knows? But that's also, especially Geelong are giving up a bit to defender so as well. So maybe Nick Blakey or someone like that could be your pod from Sydney. I think especially their backline's a bit hard to know what's going on with Lloyd and Roberts and just a few mouths to feed. But Nick Blakey does have a bit of a ceiling, especially in SuperCoach. He's shown plenty of 130. So you could potentially look at that if you're strapped for cash. But the Sydney guy you want is Brodie Grundy because he's in incredible form. I said in my captain's video that in SuperCoach, this is the best 10-week stretch of his entire career. So even Collingwood Brodie Grundy has never put together 10 weeks of a 145 average, and Sydney Brodie Grundy's just done that. But it gets even better for him. Like he's got Goldstein or Visentini or whoever Bombers roll out this week. That's an easy matchup. Big O's a little bit tougher. But then he gets split subs and Geelong, and then he finishes with Matt Flynn. So,
oh no,
there's a few Sydney guys there, but the Brodie Grundy run to finish is just essentially one of the best in the league.
That's
I'd not pass up on Callum Mills either. By the way, I still think his price is really attractive for someone who has a ridiculous ceiling on his day.
Yeah, it's true.
No, I absolutely agree with that. I'd put him in that Blakey bucket where those defenders could do. They've got really good matchups. Sometimes you wonder there's too many mouths to feed, but it seems to be Mills is actually the biggest scorer of those ones at the moment.
Yeah, it's true. So you got the Crows
then
at 5.
Then if we go on to 2...
Yeah.
Yep.
Go, who have you got at 2?
Yeah, so Crows, GWS, Sydney, and then these next 2 I'm quite excited about. So number 2 is Geelong.
Ooh.
So the Cats have a really, really nice finish. So we're talking Port Adelaide, bit tough, but probably not making finals, so not really sure what they're going to do. They then get Essendon, they get Sydney, who's not making finals, and they get Richmond. So they get essentially 2 goodish teams not making finals, plus Essendon and Richmond.
Oh, boy.
So that could be absolutely brutal. And Port Adelaide and Sydney especially giving up plenty to defenders. I don't know who you'd really want to go from that Geelong defence. Could you trust Tom Stewart? But maybe in like a draft or a really low, if you don't have much money, someone like Zach Guthrie or Lawson Humphreys.
Yeah.
Maybe. But, Holmes and Baz also cover the ground so much that I sometimes just consider them designated kickers anyway. They're often running back to get the kicking from defence and covering the whole ground. So whenever I see that a defender has a good matchup, I'm like, I just count Bailey Smith and Max Holmes in that.
Yeah. It's a good shout.
So
it's a
they're an
dirty
option,
month.
There's also...
It's
dirty. Yeah, that's big. But just on Geelong, getting to the actual pods that I was going to go to, Ollie Dempsey is someone that absolutely beats up on really bad teams. He probably more draft related and probably also but Tom Atkins as well. He's kind of the inside bull, getting a lot of clearances. If you're really struck for cash, Ollie Dempsey or Tom Atkins could be pods for you. I don't think they'll perform to the level of Max Holmes or Bailey Smith, obviously, but they could just, sneak you a little 100 average for 4 weeks, which could kind of come out of nowhere. But then in the forward line, Jeremy Cameron is on an absolute heater. We just saw what he did last week. He's going to win the Coleman, so he probably wants to kick more goals to keep in front in the Coleman. But then if you can't afford him, Brian Myers is popular in fantasy for a reason, but also think about Sean Manor. I think he's someone that has 130 plus potential just on any week. And with games against Essendon and Richmond, he could kick 10 goals in those 2 games.
Oh, could he ever? You'd want a cat in your forward line, don't you? You want at least one. Like I've seen in some draft leagues where people have like Mana, Cameron, Dempsey and keeper where he's got forward status, and if you're coming up against teams like that in the final 4 weeks in finals, you're genuinely petrified, aren't you? Because everything about that fixture for general forwards, key forwards, transition players, as you mentioned, is that's dirty. That is not helpful if you're coming up against someone with Geelong. That is not good. But if they're number 2, who the heck is number 1, Pig? Because you're growing with like, oh yeah, I'd love a bit of that. I'd love a bit of that. I want like 4 cats now in the final month. Who's the team that's got the best fixture over the final month that maybe draft coaches could go and pillage the player pool? And for classic owners, we could make some trades if we've got any left in SuperCoach and Dream Team to be able to maximise this fixture.
Yeah, well, I do want a lot of cats, but I want even more St Kilda players because their run home is what I'm going to consider the best in the league. So GWS in round 24 is kind of the last their only hard one. And, GWS, especially for midfielders, actually haven't been that hard this year. So maybe we don't even consider that one hard. But outside of that, North Melbourne, Richmond and Essendon in St Kilda's next 3. So Richmond and Essendon especially for defenders, but all 3 for midfielders. So there's some essentially 3 of the easiest teams. Maybe you'd put like someone like Melbourne or West Coast in amongst that mix, but 3 of the easiest teams for St Kilda to finish. So Nasaya is obviously on the hottest of hot streaks. If you don't have him, that's going to hurt. I think he's going to be massive in every format for last month. But Jack Sinclair, I think he's still undervalued, and he's going to finish strong. But and I'm probably saying this because I've got him in draft, but Cal Wilkie actually can score pretty well. He's someone that doesn't mind getting around, getting a lot of uncontested or intercept marks. So a little smoky pod defender, I think, could be Cal Wilkie coming home. I wouldn't be surprised to see him give you like a 105 SuperCoach average for a month or something like that. Then in the midfield, in the midfield for St Kilda as well, you got the 2 Jacks, more so McRae because I think Steele's carrying a bit of a shoulder injury. Goat Fantasy was reporting, so maybe not on Jack Steele. But who if Jack Steele does less CBAs, you can have a think about maybe who replaces him. Like, does Windhager go in there and get more? Phillip, who's a test for this week, does our boy Phillip
Don't say it. You're triggering me.
You never know. A little draft one. I'd be pretty interested in Mason Wood, actually. He's someone that can also beat up on poor teams and gets forward and kicks some goals off that wing. So, yeah, I'd think about who replaces Jack Steele if Jack Steele does less CBAs, but then I'd think about Cal Wilkie and Mason Wood as your potential pods.
It's a good shout.
But just finishing on St Kilda, I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on Rowan Marshall because this is actually the best run in the league running home, bar none. But there's been rumours he's carrying a bit of a niggle. We've seen Max Heath step up and take more CBAs. There's rumours that, well, not rumours, but if Tom De Koning's going to St Kilda, what are St Kilda doing right now playing Marshall 80% CBAs? Do they just want to play him less and get a look at Heath? I'm not really sure because he has North this week with no Cherry. Mm-hmm. He then gets Richmond and Nankervis. Then he gets Essendon and Goldstein. And then he gets GWS and Briggs. So if you're looking for a ruck run running home, Rowan Marshall is the one, the pod. But what do you guys think? Do we trust him? Do we trust his body? Do we trust St Kilda to actually play him 80% CBAs?
What's your take, Minnie?
I can tell you how much I trust him by the fact that last week I traded him to Tim English in AFL Fantasy.
Yeah, and I don't blame you for that at all.
I'll tell you how much I
sums
trust
it up
him.
for me.
I put him in my top 10 SuperCoach trade targets this week. So there you go.
You guys are opposite ends of the scale.
Yeah, I think they're going to, barring the injury, obviously, that's always the variable. That fixture's so good, and I think they want to keep that value around Rowan from a trade capital as much as they can. So I think they're just going to give him every opportunity to do it. The Heath experiment was fine, but can you really, after that round, make a change to that team? I know that was all off the back of Naz for the most part, but yeah, it feels pretty hard to do that barring an injury, but it'll be interesting to see how that kind of lands.
Is the interesting one for St Kilda actually Max Hall?
Ooh, that's a draft.
So
smoky.
last quarter, he got the bulk of the CBAs. I think both McRae and Steele were pushed out. Had really high clip rate, really good user. Fantastic probably for SuperCoach draft if he's there on your waiver wire. Like, that would be an instant pickup, and probably an AFL Fantasy and DT as well. Like, if he's there, instant pickup. But you just talked about that 4-week block that they have. North Melbourne, Richmond, Essendon. That's 3 weeks where if he's playing that mid-forward push-up role, we've seen players that are actually quite good at doing that in the past. Like, I'm not going to compare him to the quality of them, but like Toby Green, Graham Myers, Isaac Rankin, Cozzy Pickett. Like, these are players that have all done that role and done stretches of 90s. It wouldn't shock me if he's able to do a stretch of 90s, because in the last 4 weeks, he's still been able to score reasonably well despite a low CBA rate. He popped 124 against the Hawks 4 weeks ago, then scored 73, 72, 79 against Sydney, Geelong, and Melbourne. And in that period, I think he's only kicked a couple of goals as well. So, like, that's one that I'd be very interested in, actually, if you're looking for a real big smoky from them.
I think on that when I was talking about who's going to replace Jack Steele if Jack Steele does lose CBAs, and there was talk that he didn't do many in the last quarter and move forward. And when I look at the CBAs, you're right that Max Hall, so he had 33% CBAs for the game, which was easily his highest of the year. Hunter Clark got a few more than he normally does. I wouldn't really be interested in that. But it was Marcus Windhager that had the huge jump. So the last month, he's been averaging like 15%. He went up to 77% on the weekend. So, yeah, whether it's Windhager or maybe they've found something there in Hall. So they're both potential options, as that, you know, if Jack Steele is carrying a shoulder injury and gets nursed, there will be opportunity for someone, and they've got a brilliant run.
Hall had 10 CBAs for the entire game. 7 of those 10 were in the last quarter.
There you go.
That's a good shout. It's a great shout. But love that you brought those for us, Pig. In a moment, I want you to give us your top 5 scorers for AFL Fantasy across all lines for the next 4 weeks, and SuperCoach as well. But you brought up this interesting point, and I'm keen, Minnie, to get your perspective on this one. You talked about this team that's an unbelievable stretch and a player that's on an unbelievable hot hand run in Nazaya Wanganeen-Millera. And Minnie, he's probably a good archetype, but you could throw a Brodie Grundy in there as rucks. You could probably throw a Dacos or a Bont as the mid, and probably a Bailey Smith. I know he's much more popularly owned, but these kind of guys that are so far and above everybody else in their line on current trend. And for non-owners of these types of players, Minnie, it's not only taking enjoyment away, but when he's unique against you in your league or your rankings push, these types of players, it's a 20 to 30 point gap on the next nearest best option. So I guess my question is this a player worth breaking your balance of how you shift the dollars around to get that hot hand player? So an illustrative type would be, are you getting rid of a Bailey Dale and a Connor Rosie, just combination for illustrative sakes, and going, I'm getting Naz, and then I'm just getting the best I can get, and maybe a Sicily's that kind of guy, or something like that, you know, someone that's got some previous pedigree but isn't popping. Is it worth kind of breaking up that team value allocation just to eliminate it? Are they that important is probably the question I should ask. Are these types of players that important that it's worth breaking parts of how you would normally trade to afford this player in your team?
It can be. So if we look at AFL Fantasy as an example, over the last 5 rounds, Bailey Smith is averaging 106. The next 2 highest averages are Aaron Norton and Daniel Curtin, who are very, very lowly owned. And then it's Luke Jackson and Cozzy Pickett. They're over 13 and 15 points a game behind him. If you look at the defenders, we've got Naz at 125. The next highest is Max Holmes at 102. And Jack Sinclair at 101. And if we go to the mids, Nick Dacos, 131. Marcus Bontempelli, 124. Matt Rao, sneaky in there at 123 over his last 5. And then it's Dunks at 117. And I'll throw away Alex Davies off of his one game. Drops down to 110 for Isaac Heaney. And it's a similar sort of viewpoint in the rucks as well, with Brodie Grundy over in second place, Lloyd Meek. And in third place, funnily enough, Rowan Marshall. But again, over 20 points ahead. If you think that upgrade can net you 25 points on the run home, and the player that you can downgrade one of your other players, let's say you use a Bailey Dale or a Connor Rosie, for example, to a James Sicily. If you think the difference between them is less than the gain that you're going to get, then absolutely that's a worthwhile trade to make. But you've got to be pretty confident those are the two players that are the worst links in your team in that process. And this is very AFL Fantasy specific, because I don't think that coaches have the trades, let alone the cash, let alone the ability to be able to get up to players like a Nazire, like a Grundy, like a Baz Smith, who don't own him at the moment, in any easy stretch of manner. So I think in the forward line, you can try and get a bit creative. People are starting to look and move up for players like a Jack McRae. We just spoke about his run, but if he's losing those CBAs, is he one to hold on to? Players like an Isaac Rankin, like a Caleb Daniel as well, that coaches are moving away from. If you can get creative and find, we just talked about players with good runs, Max Hall, Brian Myers, Sean Manor, Jeremy Cameron as potential trading targets, and use that cash to upgrade to someone like a Nazar Wanganeen-Miller or like a Grundy or a Bonta or Dacos, whoever you don't have. Absolutely. But look for the two weakest links in your team to try and make those trades with.
Yeah, it's some good advice. So, Pig, we set you some homework, not only for the teams, but also to give us the top 5 across the formats for the run home. You've done the teams for us. Now, run us through the players for AFL Fantasy. Let's stay in that lane, then we'll hit SuperCoach. Who are the top 5 players out of your forecast for the final 4 weeks of the year?
Yeah, I can do that. And I think it flows on nicely from what Minnie was talking about, break it to make it, break your team. These are probably the 5 players that I think over the next 4 weeks are going to give you the most total points. So as I read them out, I'd be interested to see if Minnie agrees that it is worth breaking your team to get these guys in, because if it's worth breaking them to get anyone in and you don't have any of these 5, it's probably these. So I think, and I'm not necessarily putting them in order here, but I think the top 5, I think Nasaya is going to stay up there. Then I think Gawn and Grundy are going to be in the top 5 scorers, just given their run homes and Grundy's form. But I think Gawn's about to go on a hot streak as well. And then I'm going to round out with Baz Lenker and Jordan Dawson. I think they're going to be the top 5 AFL fantasy scorers on the run home. There are some other guys who I think have some pretty good runs. And between the difference between 5 and 10 probably isn't that big, but you've asked me for the top 5, so I'm going to go Nasaya, Gawn, Baz, Grundy, and Dawson. Your take, Minnie?
The only one of those that I think is a bit questionable for me is actually Jordan Dawson. Yeah. I can be with you the entire way with the other 4. I think that they're all fantastic. But the one that I would actually sneak in is I would probably take a sneaky stab at either Max Holmes or Baz Smith, and I'd probably go with Baz just for the ceiling.
Yep.
I know Jordan Dawson is a man who can step up on those big stages, but I just don't think he has had that huge ceiling in AFL Fantasy this year to be able to really take a game away from you. His ceiling scores are in the 130s. You look at someone like a Baz, you look at someone like a Grundy, like a Gawn. These are all players that have pushed 150s, 160s. Maybe not as much this year, but in the past, definitely.
It's a good shout.
No, that's fair. And part of the Dawson thought is that West Coast and North games in his last month could potentially give him a little spike, but also Hawthorn and Collingwood, they're all in the fight for that top 4, so, or at least top 8. Yep. So yeah, that's my thought there. But also wouldn't sneeze at having Max Holmes or someone like that in there. So absolutely,
it's a good shout. All right, what about for SuperCoach? Then again, hopefully in your team you've gone through those 5 or 6 names that the boys have just mentioned. You're like, yep, got it. Okay, I'm in good shape. You've gone through the teams and gone, yep, I'm in good shape. I got a couple. What about for SuperCoach? Who are the 5 players that you forecast to be the top 5 scorers over the final 4 weeks?
Yeah, well, 3 of them are the same. I'm going to include Grundy, Gawn, and Nasaya as the top 5 as well for SuperCoach.
Yeah.
Just given their run, they're incredibly easy runs home and the form they're in. But then I'm going to have Bont and Butters in. Butters' run is a bit hard, but he's just such a talent that I think he'll be around that mark. Someone else, you could look at someone like Matt Rowell or Nick Dacos around that spot, but Bont's probably the one that really jumps from not quite being there in AFL to definitely being there in SuperCoach.
Yeah, for sure. Mini, your take?
I mean, again, I agree with the other three. I think that Bunt and Butters are probably there because of historical reasons. They both have huge ceilings. But I tell you the one that I actually think could be a really sneaky shout to be in that top 5. It's Jeremy Cameron. Like, all the talk this week is, are they going to try and feed him to get him to 100 goals? And genuinely, I can see it happening. And I can just see that there's 3 games in the next 4 where he kicks 8+. And if he's kicking 8+ goals, they're 130 They're 130 SuperCoach games.
Yeah.
And if you, over the last month, if you're averaging, 130, I'd say that probably puts you in the top 5 scorers. And so I'd say that he's the one that I'd be actually very interested in.
Yeah.
And I envy anyone who can afford to do Caleb Daniel to Jeremy Cameron in one trade this week, because if you had 2 or more trades left in SuperCoach and you can do that in one trade, that is the easiest trade you can make this year.
It's a good shout.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely incredible. And we talked about his run home. Butters was that one in that 5 that I wasn't as sure about. Maybe just on the borderline. Bont, I am pretty confident just with Melbourne and West Coast still to come. Plus, they're right in that finals hunt. He's going to be so hungry to make finals, and we've seen what he can do. So, I'm pretty confident with Grundy, Bont, Gawn, Nasiah. The 5th one, let's flip a coin. It could be Jeremy Cameron. That would be really exciting.
Wouldn't that be fun? That'd be for sure. We'll hit our stocks on, stocks off in a moment. We've got about 10 minutes or so left to go on our pod for today. But give me a couple of unique picks, some pig pods. Should we call it something fun? Let's go with that. Give me a couple of uniques, Pig, that you can get Mini's take on and my take on that might be able to make or break some team's success over this final 4 weeks. Just give me a couple of names that could hit unique.
Well, I have given quite a few spoilers in terms of when I was going through those fixture runs is kind of where I want to get my uniques from. Like, I don't want to be picking a unique that's a Brisbane Lions midfielder that has the single hardest run to come home. Like, I'm not doing that. So I am going to be looking at the uniques from those teams. And so I'm a big fan of Finn Callaghan. He's just in such form and looks so good, and he's taking his game to another level. Pretty good run. I really like that. As I said, I'm kind of keen on Nick Blakey, but then Jeremy Cameron we've mentioned quite a bit. I don't know I guess he's still a pod because not that many people were able to get onto him, but those that did are absolutely laughing. So there are a few of my guys, but Rowan Marshall was I think it's the real Hail Mary that makes or breaks. Like, if you're kind of in that, I don't know, what makes top 10 get prizes in SuperCoach, if you're in that like 50 range and you need a real Hail Mary to try and win some cash, maybe it's someone out to get Rowan Marshall. That's kind of the guy that could give you a 170 or it could be a 70. So there are a few of my guys there.
Your thoughts on some of those, Mini?
I think they're all fantastic. I think my feelings with regards to Ron Marshall, but I do love Finn Callaghan. I think he's a very, very, very good player, and he is now finding a way to be able to accumulate a lot of ball.
All right. Okay. Some nice options that have navigators there. We'll wrap up the podcast this week, giving us our stocks on, stocks off. The rules of the game are simple. We'll go match by match. You tell me one player and one reason why you are stocks on them. And then we'll go around and share one player you do not want to own for whatever variable reason. We've got the Dogs and the Giants kicking off Thursday night. Mini, who are your stocks on and who are your stocks off?
Stocks on, Lachie Whitfield.
Nice.
Stocks off, Bailey Dale.
Oh, God. I couldn't agree with you more, but the fixture's so good. It's a good matchup for halfbacks, but He's been so bad lately. Can you tell I'm a Bailey Dale owner, at least one format? That's okay. I'm cool. Moving on from that game, Pig, for you, a stocks on, stocks off player?
Well, you know how much I love my ruck analysis, and I think this is going to come up a lot in this section because I find that so much easier to predict the scores and their spikes and lows. So I'm quite keen on Tim English in this game against Kieran Briggs. Kieran Briggs has been a pretty easy matchup. And then stocks down, I'm probably off Tom Green, and not in a big way, but it's just that Bulldogs are one of the harder midfield matchups. So I just don't think it's going to be a spike game for Tom Green.
Yeah, fair shout too. We'll go to Friday night. Crom and Hawks. Mini, stocks on, stocks off. What you got?
Brutal game. This is going to be a fantastic one to watch. I think that I am stocks on absolutely no one in this game.
Oh, get off the fence, Mini. Get off.
I don't think that's on the fence at all. There's genuinely not a player I would want to own from either of these teams on that Friday night fixture. For the rest of the season, sure, but for that fixture alone, I don't think there's a single player I want.
Is there a single player you're happy to jump off then? Give us something.
Isaac Rankin.
Nice. There you go. Just anchored in that forward 50 now, isn't he? And it doesn't matter. The Crows are still scoring without him dominating, so that's fair enough too. Pig, are you gonna put a name that your stocks on in this game? Is there some Yeah, okay, good. All right, stocks on, stocks off. What you got, man?
There is, but it's more. I wouldn't want to own him in Classic. It's probably more if you've got this guy in draft, you're probably looking at a decent week, and that's Riley O'Brien. Mick's been giving up a fair bit to Ruckman, so I think if you've got Riley O'Brien in draft leagues, which I think I do in one of them, that's pretty solid. It might even be a little captaincy if you need a little 110. And then in the inverse, I'm very cold on Lloyd Meek this week because Rob is one of the hardest matchups on the inverse side. So the two ruckmen, I'm keen on one and I'm cold on the other.
Fair enough too. First of our 4 Saturday games, the Bombers getting to them. Don't you worry, I'm keen on someone's Zach Merritt take on this. But the Demons and the Eagles. Mini, stocks on, stocks off. What you got?
I'm probably stealing a bit of Pig's turf here, but all the stocks, every chip you can, Max gone.
All in. All in.
All in.
And off? Is there anyone you're off on this game?
Clayton Oliver genuinely looks a shell of himself at the moment.
Unfortunately. Yeah, it's very true. Have you been sharked by your stocks on pick there, Pig? Is it just Max gone for days and daylight? Yeah.
Yeah, I am, but I'm going to double down and say Max Gorn, so we're going to go Max Gorn squared because this is just... This is going to be probably everyone's top captain of the week, potentially. He got that, 198 or 199 against them earlier in the year. And yeah, just why not go again? And then, I don't know, my stock's off, just anyone from West Coast.
Harley Reid? Like if you want to pick
Harley Reid.
I didn't want to go there. I thought it was low-hanging fruit.
Mate, that I do my best work around the ankles of fruit. That's where I do my finest work. The Suns and the Tigers. Mini, stocks on, stocks off. What you got?
Noah Anderson, stocks on. Let's go, baby.
Nice. Yeah, it's on. And then off?
Toby Nankervis. Can you tell I'm an owner?
Oh, it's going to be brutal this week. Brutal. It won't be fun. You might as well just play the donut. Pig, who have you got for us? Suns and the Tigers, stocks on, stocks off.
Yeah, well, I have pre-populated and pre-written mine out, and I was also in on Noah Anderson, but I'm also happy to be in on Matt Rao. He's especially in SuperCoach, but even in fantasy, he's just in hot form. I think both of those GWS mids are going to rip up Richmond, and then also very, very cold on Toby Nankervis this week. Jared Witts is just one of the hardest ruck matchups there is, and
it's not going to be fun. Those that are trying to fix a Rankin issue, a Daniel issue, don't have a Nazaya Wanganeen, Millera, and a Nankervis owners, there's probably only 3 people that fit in that Venn diagram, but if that's you, just look forward to some daily fantasy or something like that. Sydney and the Bombers, stocks on and stocks off. What you got, Minnie?
Nice and quick. Stocks on, Brody Grundy. Stocks off, Zach Merritt.
Copy and paste. Amen. Testify. Yes.
Yep. Copy and paste. Control C, Control V.
Yeah, fair enough too. The Pies and the Lions, though, wrap up our Saturday, and some interesting potential outcomes here. Who are your stocks on and who are your stocks off, Minnie?
Stocks on, Josh Dunkley. Stocks off, Dane Zorko.
Oh, yes. Yes. It's not a great health-wise, but not a great month either. What about for you, Pig?
Yeah, I'm going to stocks on Nick Dacos, and not necessarily because it's an easy matchup, but just because the last time he played them, he pumped out that 170. They didn't even try and tag him. They might have tried to throw Barry at him at the end just to say they did something, but they haven't really tagged at all this year. I've looked back through the history, and they just haven't done much of a tagging job. But also with Nick, his CBAs are down quite a bit in the last 3 weeks, around that 50% mark. But I was actually at the MCG on the weekend watching the game live, and him and Josh are literally just rotating. So anytime Nick Dacos isn't in the CBA, he's at the back flank, and he's either getting kick-ins or racking up cheapies. So I think they're talking about resting him, but I think it's going to be that in-game rest because they still want him to win the Brownlow, and he wants a chance to win the Brownlow. Yeah. So I think Nick's going to have some really piggish games coming up.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it'll be this game. Maybe it will, but I want to be on it in case it is.
Yeah, it's fair enough too.
And then also...
Yes?
Then also Dane Zorko. I'm off Dane Zorko as well. Injury niggles, old man things.
Yeah, it's not looking good. Saints and the Roos. Who are we on and who are we off? Minnie?
On Naz, off Daniel. Simple.
Beautiful. Pig?
I'm on Rowan Marshall, as we talked about, going up against a cherryless North. And then I'm a little bit off LDU. I think he's going to cop some attention, whether it's someone like Steele sitting beside him, but maybe Windhager.
Yeah.
I think they're a good matchup body-wise, so I'm a bit off LDU.
Yeah, fair enough too. That might be the first time we've mentioned Luke Davies-Udiak all year on the podcast too. So well done on bringing that name through the ecosystem. Geelong and Port Adelaide, Minnie. Who are you on and who are you off?
On Baz. Probably off Rosie. Just concerned.
Has laid out screaming all about him, doesn't he? Let alone playing hurt, whatever that's for. Who are you on and off in this game, Pig?
I'm on Jordan Sweet, a 200 and then a 125, I think, in SuperCoach in the last 2 weeks. Got that sole ruck roll doing really well, and against Geelong, who are very easy. So I'm quite keen on Jordan Sweet. Probably more a draft action. And then I'm also pretty scared about Connor Rosie being a laid out.
Yeah. Who would have thought if you took the wild hit 2 weeks ago and went, I can't get anyone else from Cherry, I'll go to Sweet. What a lovely piece of luck that has fallen in your lap over the last fortnight, especially in SuperCoach. And then the last game of the round, the Dockers and the Blues. Who are you on and who are you off, Minnie?
I'm on Jordan Clark for this one.
Come on,
and I'm
lucky days.
Off on Adam Chera.
Yes. That's MJ
Revenge
territories. Revenge game.
It's 3 years. Come off it. It's not even revenge anymore.
He's seen him with the new girlfriend and he does not care anymore. He's like, I was better. That's fine. You can be with them. I feel so much better about my life. That is MJ levels low-hanging fruit on Chera, but I'm here for it, Minnie. I'm here for it. What about for you, Pig? Who have you got? Who are you on and who are you off?
I'm pretty keen on anyone from Freo. I think Carlton are just a mess at the moment and they're pretty much tanking, but I'm going to go in on Brayshaw. I think he's been one of the best midfielders in both formats all year. He could definitely take advantage And then I'm just so off Tom De Koning. Been off him for a few weeks. But if there's people that have had to hold him in the limited trade format, so that sucks.
You just hope a Pitternet doesn't play with Mackay and Curnow back. You hope that, but honestly, we know he's walking. Why would they, right? But yeah, it's painful. All right, that's our stocks on, stocks off this week, and wraps up our podcast. Pig, always a pleasure having you on the podcast. We'll make sure that the socials for you are inside the link in the description. Your captain's episode, which the Dr SuperCoach YouTube puts out there, is always a must watch. Mate, as always, an absolute pleasure chatting with you. We can't wait to be chatting with you again real soon, I'm sure, as we head towards 2026.
No, always a pleasure, MJ, and good to see you've had a haircut. Looking good as always.
Thank you. We nearly got one episode through. There are
Almost
two things certain in life. Pig trying to get either a Josh Kelly gag in or a haircut gag in. Only getting one, I'll absolutely take. Minnie, I've opened the floor for you to take the second one. Always a pleasure, mate. Looking forward to having you on next week's strategy session too. Go on, take it. Bring him up. Go on.
I told you, no low-hanging fruit, no low-hanging fruit. Pleasure to be doing business with you both. It was good to have a chat. Bring it on next week.
Looking forward to it. Hey, no matter the moves that you're making this week, we're here to help you. You can get in touch with us. You can find all the details for Pig and the Dr SuperCoach gang inside the description of this episode. If you haven't followed us across social media, make sure you do so. All the details to get in touch with our Patreon and get your hands on some Coaches Panel merch also inside the description of this episode. Good luck this week. We hope the trades and the moves you make absolutely sing for you. And until we chat to you again soon, we wish you well, and we hope all the moves you make land your way.